All righty, let's get started. Welcome to the B-player problem for sales teams and how to fix it with AI. My name's Russ Summers. I'll be your moderator today, and I'd like to welcome to the discussion our two speakers, Hayes Davis from Gradient Works and Noah Zandan from Quantified.ai. Good to see both of you.
Hello.
So I've known both of these people for years in different contexts, and I want to start by just sort of mentioning Hayes because Hayes has had such an interesting journey that's led him to found Gradient Works. I worked with Hayes at a company called Cision, which Hayes joined via acquisition of a company he had founded called Union Metrics. And when that happens, you walk into a business and you go, where do I fit? Where can I add value? And the most difficult and problematical job of a scaling SaaS startup, as Trendkite was, and the most painful is really the revenue operations function. And Hayes looked at that and said, that's a difficult problem. That's a painful problem. I want to do that. And he stepped in and ran that function like a champ and learned a ton, which informs what he's building now. So just couldn't be more excited to have you with us today, Hayes. Welcome.
I appreciate that. And that, by the way, is why I look like this. Yeah, I didn't have a gray hair before I started that. So.
Yes, and you are graying quite gracefully, as many people say. So I think we're all aligned on that. And Noah, I've had the opportunity to work with you for a couple of years. And if you don't mind my just dropping a little bit of the backstory, and you can add in, Noah had been fascinated for years by the problem of effective communication, starting with the problem of helping executives communicate more effectively. And he spent a decade doing deep research into that, building models that help us understand how communication is effective or not, right? But then he started asking the question, where is this really valuable in the market? And that led us to sales conversations, because sales conversations are money conversations. Quota is made or quota is missed based on how effectively you can connect with your target prospect. So Noah took that knowledge that he had been building for 10 years and started bringing it into the sales arena, really bringing something new in terms of analysis and practice for reps, as we'll see. So welcome, Noah.
Thank you, Russ, and yeah, appreciate we did not figure this out overnight, but it's been a fun journey, and we're excited about what we're on to.
Every overnight success is at least 10 years of work. I learned that in bands. That remains true here. So I'd like to start with a question, if you two don't mind. What is the role of AI in sales going to be? We see it affecting coding, we see it affecting marketing, and we see it affecting even education. But sales has me a little bit scratching my head in terms of how will this affect sales? So what are your takes on how AI will affect sales?
Well, I'll start, given Quantified.ai, it's in our name, and it's something we've been doing for about 6 years before it was cool, Russ. One of the interesting things about AI is it's been in sales for a long time, right? I mean, when we talk about AI, I think we're at the top of a hype cycle right now about generative AI. And so much of what was in the past is what I like to call better math, where AI, the first round of AI was really, we have all these big aspirations, but it was really like really intelligent modeling neural nets, like thinking about how to run really exact specific math problems. Helpful for sales, but not really like the sales problems are not what I'd call mathematical and exact enough that the first generation of AI was remarkably prevalent in sales tech. What's really exciting now is, as we've seen this generative AI, which is like, an amazingly powerful technique and assistant for everybody, as we're seeing it touch coding, as we're seeing it touch marketing, as we're seeing it impact education in ways I don't even want to wrap my head around. It's coming for sales, and it's coming fast, and it's coming wide. What's so interesting to me is all of the different applications of this. I think the one that we hear about the most initially as a use case, maybe the lowest hanging fruit, is content creation for sales. So if you think about a sales rep that, a BDR, an SDR that's doing a lot of outreach, they can do that in a more personalized, a more customized, a more scalable way using AI. that's probably the most prevalent way that we've sort of initially seen this attention, Russ, with companies like Lavender or Reggie, making a lot of noise about generative AI for B2B sales. What's interesting to me, and Hayes, I'm curious for your perspective on this, is we also see AI impacting a lot of other sales use cases, right? Whether it's more efficient sales engagement or better sales data retrieval, or the world that I live in, which is sales role play and coaching and improvement. It's not just sales content. AI and the power of this next generation of AI is really going to change the way that a rep does their work, the manager does their work, and the leader does their work. And Hayes, I'm curious, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I like your characterization of better math. I think what's fascinating about the current generation of generative AI is it is better math under the hood, but it is better math that has this really powerful interface to it in terms of language. And I think that might be this big unlock for how all of these techniques and all of these capabilities that have been being developed in various domains for years and years and years can now kind of be brought forward into some areas that they really weren't before. And what I mean by that is I think the future of where AI fits into sales, just like really any of these other domains, is going to be there's an initial breakthrough use case, which we're seeing that today. And Noah, you hit it. It's let's generate some content and let's maybe turn that into a Q&A. So let's slap a chatbot on it, right? Which has value. I think the next phase of this is to say, these large language models give us the ability to not just generate content, but to understand content in a way that I think is really unique, and then turn that into something that you can utilize in a lot of different ways to yes, do question and answer type scenarios, to help with analysis, to help prioritize accounts based on market research, to do those kinds of things. So I think there's lots and lots of opportunity here to build out, I think, really interesting pipelines that combine the new capabilities with, quote unquote, old capabilities to produce functionality that's going to be pretty amazing. But also kind of, some of it will be pretty mundane. I think what we have called AI has shifted. The goalposts have shifted a lot over the course of many, many years. It wasn't that long ago that the idea of recognizing your friends and family in photos on your phone was was AI, right? Now it's just a feature. And so I think what's fascinating is going to be what of this new generation, what are the truly transformational use cases? And I believe there are some. And then what are the use cases that simply become table stakes? And I think that's what's going to be pretty fascinating going forward, because there's a lot of power wrapped up in some pretty simple, on the technology side, ways of accessing that power. And so a lot of folks are going to be experimenting a lot, and we're going to see some really interesting things happen as a result. But like everything else, we'll keep shifting the goalposts a little bit on what AI is as it gets to be more ingrained in products we use every day.
That makes great sense. And I love the insight that there's going to be impacts really across the sales stack and across the sales motion, and that is very similar to what we'll see in almost any other discipline. But today we're here talking about B players, and I'm curious as to why that is. Why wouldn't we start with talking about A players? Why are B players an interesting place to start?
I'll go first, Russ. I think it's the lost opportunity. It's the missing opportunity. It's sort of the secret of efficiency. If you think about that last slide and you dive into the data on the improvements you get in coding or for students on efficiency, it's somewhere between 30 to 55% efficiency improvements, which is remarkable, right? I mean, go tell any sales leader that they can see 30 to 55% efficiency improvements, and they'll probably throw their wallet at you as fast as they can. So, what's exciting here, and it's connected to this quote, which I really like, is there's an opportunity. This quote was used actually to justify a layoff, which is not the best outcome of it, but the quote is so interesting because it's the data every sales team knows. I mean, honestly, 50% is a pretty high number compared to most of the sales teams we talk to. So, the amount of what I'd call underperformance or efficiency optimization in sales, it's just a remarkably huge opportunity. And, if AI can have an imprint on that, it's very, very exciting. And, one of the things we think about a lot is, okay, well, can you make that 50%? Sure. Can you make that 50% bigger, right? Can you help the winners win more? But even better, what about that other 50% of account executives that aren't performing? What if you could make some percentage of those perform, right? And that to me is the mathematically exciting part of this quote. And the mathematically exciting part for sales teams is right now we live in this world that sales teams are not perfectly efficient. They're not perfectly optimized. AI can dramatically help with that. And that's what's so exciting. I'm here to talk about the coaching and role play and training behavioral component of that. Hayes has also an amazing angle of sort of the efficiency, productivity component of that. And, this is just, hopefully this quote brings forward the size and potential implications of what we can do here.
And, I think this is obviously an incredibly tough market. Salesforce is justifying this to do a RIF, right? And many other companies have also justified this to do a RIF. I think the companies that succeed coming out of this are going to figure out how to, if you think about it in terms of a bell curve, right? A probability distribution of your reps. If you're getting so much from a small number of those reps that are way off to the right in the bell curve, that's great, but you're building a lot of risk into your model. What if one of those reps leaves? What if they have some deals that go the wrong way, right? And then suddenly you're saying we've been playing hero ball at the same time when really maybe we should have been playing money ball. Let's figure out how to shift that entire bell curve to the right. And I think one of the important things that sales teams are doing right now is they are trying to figure out how to do that, because you just can't waste the drop of quota capacity at this point. Every boardroom discussion right now is how do we improve CAC payback? How do we lower the cost of acquiring a customer? And how do we speed that process up in a really, really challenging environment? And one of the ways that you lower the cost of acquiring a customer is you get more from each of those reps that create that cost in the first place, right? And so I think that's one of the really powerful opportunities that sales teams have when they think about, and I don't know that I want to even say like A players and B players, right? You just have your folks at the top of the bell curve and you have your folks who, for whatever reason, seem to be over on the right, right? So can you just move that whole distribution over and make those, the bulk of your team more successful? If you can do that, imagine where Salesforce would be. It wouldn't be like, it's not about just distributing like more of that 96% across more reps. It's if you moved all those reps to the side, then are they at 110% of this number? Are they 120% of this number? How much larger could Salesforce be if they made their Salesforce more effective? And I think that's the opportunity here.
Make great points on both. What I hear from you, Hayes, is there's a lot of diversification of risk and shifting the entire curve up, which makes great sense. And then from you, Noah, there's an intriguing insight that underperformance is in some cases really latent performance that you just need to find the ways to unlock. So intriguing.
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, one of the old mantras in sales was, hire 2 or 3 for a role and see who works, right? And for a while, with the low cost of capital, you could afford to do that. And, as Hayes is getting to right now, that's not something you can afford to do. And, we talk to sales leaders all the time that say they hired like crazy in 21 and for part of 22 while the market was frothy. And you're right, Russ, they don't know if those reps are going to perform. Right now, they're not in that top bucket of performers. A lot of times they're a B player, frankly, because they just they kind of haven't seen enough cycles or haven't been onboarded well, or they just don't know. And, it's a really interesting efficiency question that I believe AI can dramatically help with.
That makes great sense. So how do we then approach improving the B players? How do we approach shifting that curve like we talked about?
What we love to say at Quantified is reps need more reps. And so, when we think about why is somebody a B player, sometimes it comes down generally to two different persona types on sales teams. One is they have the competencies, but maybe not the motivation. So they have the skills, but maybe not the drive. The other case, which is sort of where we tend to focus more, is they maybe don't have the skills yet, or they haven't been given the training, they haven't been given the tools to succeed, and they have the drive. And so, creating motivation, there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of conversations about how to do that for sales teams, a lot of methods and systems around compensation and motivation. But what's really interesting for us is there's this part of the market where people just haven't been given enough cycles, right? We hire somebody, we do a little bit of onboarding or training, maybe they have some, they go watch a few people do it, and then all of a sudden we give them a book of business and we wait to see if they perform. But there's no sort of proven method of really onboarding well, training well, apprenticeship in sales. And the problem with onboarding generally, you ask any sales leader, it takes too long, right? I mean, any week, any month, it's just so critical because that quota is lost and that potential contribution is lost. And so, for us, the batting cage analogy, right? The pitch practice analogy is really true. The sales leaders already know that, right? I'm not here to say that they don't already know that. The problem is right now, that's a really human motion to do. Role play, like ask any sales leader about role play, they'll tell you two things. Hey, Noah, role play works. Hey, Noah, I hate role play. And that's the contrast we have here is managers are told to do it. They probably don't do it. And we know it works. We know that if I could sit with every new rep that we hire and personally hold their hand to proficiency, and that was the only thing I had to do in my job, I could do it. But that's not what actually happens on sales teams. And so, cycle time, role play, practice is the world that we live in at Quantified. And we believe that as reps can get more reps and use artificial intelligence to do that, so you can practice as realistically as possible with the prospect. It also does some of the job of the manager of giving feedback. We can create a new motion in sales training and in sales practice and sales performance. And this is, Russ just pulled up me interacting with an AI avatar. And what you can see here is we can create high enough quality AI that is trained on your talk track and will respond like a prospect. And we can do that to give people the training and practice to make them ready to succeed, to make them more higher performer if they're already in the seat and they're a B player or a C player. And we can use modern technology like artificial intelligence to create these cycles, to create this foundational competency so people can perform better. And so that's one of the things we're most excited about with AI because, I'm a guitarist, right? And, Russ, I see your guitars there, so maybe it primed my thinking, but like, I would never go to a performance without practicing, right? It's just not something anyone does. There's no band that just performs and doesn't practice. It's amazing in sales that with such risk and on the performance and so much money at stake that people just don't practice. And we think it's because they haven't had the tools to do that. And we're really excited to bring to the market a very unique and powerful way to unlock that for sales teams.
And do you hear from customers that have adopted this solution that I didn't used to do role play, but now we do?
Yeah, so the ratio we see is somewhere between 4 to 6x more practice. So they'll often tell us, yeah, we try to do it, or maybe, we have an SKO or we have a national sales meeting where it happens once a year. But we know this from skill training too, that if you just do something once, there's a forgetting curve. It's called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And people tend to forget things almost completely in 2 weeks. And so the problem is I could do the most amazing sales training in the world with Hayes and teach him everything he needs to be successful on our talk track and in our position. He's going to forget that unless it's reinforced. And so, Russ, that we see a significantly more practice. We also, more excitingly, see the skills and the messaging and the knowledge transfer pulled through by reinforcing that practice with spaced repetition. And that's really where you can see the dramatic behavioral change that impacts performance.
Intriguing.
Real quick, can I put on my former head of RevOps hat for a second? So I just want to really reinforce all of this. my team was responsible for sales enablement. And globally, Cision had 600 sellers. The team that I worked with on sales enablement was largely responsible for North America. So we had several hundred sellers there. And this was a huge challenge for us. We rolled out multiple new initiatives. We were involved in M&A, so there were new products to roll out. There were things like that. And so we were always struggling to figure out how do we get that kind of spaced repetition at scale. So first, how do we communicate something initially, but then how do we understand whether or not the reps are able to retain it and give them the ability to do that? And so in our case, a lot of times we did what a lot of sales organizations do. We relied on the sales managers to hopefully, do some coaching and do some role play. That's always, it's awkward. It's hard to get right. Everybody's just kind of trying to rush through it, and you can't really simulate a good prospect in a lot of cases. So that was one thing we did. We also did the sort of pitch practice, like record yourself type thing. And two things on that. One, I don't think it was super effective, just generally, because one of the things that we struggled with was it was a big undertaking for the sales enablement team, which is pretty small relative to the sales team itself, to evaluate those and give people, responses and feedback. I mean, you're trying to get 200 reps to all be, moving in the same direction, using the same talk track. It just really wasn't realistic to do that more than once, and honestly kind of half-assed when you did it. Right? And so, anyway, I think there's a lot of promise, to this approach. Obviously, your customers are seeing it now, but just having been in this seat and dealt with these problems, it's something I'm super excited about, because it would have been really valuable for us.
That's good to hear, because yes, I won't go into it, but trust me, I've had similar experiences. But there are also other ways in which AI is going to help sales. So Hayes, you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yes, I think, everybody has a kind of a basic understanding about, some of the ways that we try to help reps succeed, right? Like enablement is one of those. Like you never go to a sales leader and they say, well, I don't value enablement at all, right? Whether they demonstrate whether they do or not is another question, right? But they always understand that. I think you try to equip your reps with the tools to do their job. Obviously you look at like sales engagement products, they've been, it's a huge area of investment, right? And it's very visible. So you go get outreach and sales loft, so you can go to your reps, hey, you can send emails and do dials faster and do those kinds of things. And then, we all spend a lot of money on data and enrichment, like, big contracts with Zoom Info and those types of things. So you have those like phone numbers and firmographics. And when I was running RevOps for those 600 sellers, that was like, I kind of looked around and said, well, where are we struggling? Where are we, what do we not have to help make our reps successful? And I looked kind of across the board and I said, well, we can be better in all those areas, but we are investing in all of those areas. And so once you create that investment, once you do that investment, you've got all these, I think of it as you've got all this potential energy in your sales team, right? They know what to say. Hopefully they've been training, they've been doing all the repetition they need, they've been practicing, right? They've got the tools that they need to go out and do that. And then most companies take all of that energy and pour it into the wrong places. They don't deploy their sales team in a way that is most effective to cover their market. And that's seeing that firsthand at Cision was where I fell in love with the nerdiest problem in sales, which is territories. Because ultimately that's what territory is about. And we do territory in many cases the same way we've done it for roughly 100 years with various twists, right? And I kind of use this diagram to talk about it, but I think many of you who are listening in, if you've been involved in a territory planning process, kind of a classic process where you spend a quarter or more arguing over, what are our zip code cuts going to be? How are we going to figure out what's our potential in this little market and this little market and all of that? You end up dividing up the world into patches through this painful spreadsheet driven political process, right? And you do it once a year because it's very painful, right? Segment the market and then carve everything up. We've all heard the term territory carve, right? And then you hand those territories to your reps. And we're talking here about making your A players and your B players and everybody else successful. Like, how do we move that curve to the right? And when you think about it, the thing that gets me is so often the opportunity in sales is not as evenly distributed as the capability, as the talent. And so the people that we think of as A players, they've often just got a better book of business to work. And those things just kind of accrete to them. They win a couple of deals and then they get the next best territory. And it kind of goes on there. And the players who struggle, who maybe don't have the best book of business, you say, well, they're not a very good rep, right? Where in reality, they've got Northern Arkansas and somebody else has Northern California. Those two things are not created equal. And so I think we do our reps a disservice in many cases by doing this process. And we're doing ourselves as sales leadership a disservice, because often what we're doing is creating a situation where some people just aren't set up to succeed, right? And then, of course, we do, we kind of patch this whole process with other things. We try to layer in inbounds. And I can't tell you how many times we talk to companies at Gradient Works where, they've set up like a geographic territory and then it's not fair enough. So then they layer on like round robin inbounds on top of that. And the reps are just like, who the hell am I supposed to actually talk to? Right. So you start to kind of layer on all these pieces together, and it creates a scenario where reps just don't have the opportunity to succeed, and no amount of coaching for a rep that just has a bad book of business is really going to change it. You might get them up from like 50% of their number to 70% of their number. And maybe that's great. Maybe you've built your model to support that. But what does that do to the rep when they're just struggling to survive, where they see their peers who have maybe the same level of training, the same basic capabilities, they've just got better accounts to work? And I see it happen all the time. And I think it's just really frustrating, and it's a waste of that precious quota capacity. And it's something that drives an increase in CAC. So at Gradient Works, we try to help companies do something better, and we call it dynamic books. And so the idea behind dynamic books is you get rid of that concept of a carve that you do once a year, and then you hand out these patches to these reps, and move it to something that's much more modern, less like we've done for the last 100 years, and more built for today's sales teams. And this is where AI comes into play, because what you can actually do now is turn this from a static process you do once a year to something that's dynamic, that you do continuously. And we kind of use this diagram to talk about it, but imagine a world where every rep has a high quality book of business that represents across the board the best accounts that your company could be working on at any given point in time. They're prospecting into the best possible accounts. So there are no more bad territories. Each rep has the best opportunity to succeed, and you as a company have the best opportunity to cover the accounts that you want. And the secret to doing that is to move a couple of things. Move the prioritization of what accounts to work forward. Don't just outsource it to the reps and say, reps, you've got to figure this out, along with all the other things that you need to be doing and all the practice you need to be doing and all these other things. Move that to something that you actually can control, so that you're distributing accounts that are good, are high fit, are high timing. And then incorporate a feedback loop. Allow reps to say, you know what, I can't make progress with this account. I'm going to return it. I'm going to allow it to be filtered through that segmentation and prioritization again. And so that's the idea behind dynamic books. But where AI really comes into play here is we've got an ability, if we move that segmentation and prioritization and load balancing, kind of allocation, and we think of segmentation, prioritization, and allocation as what we call the SPA model. There's a lot of opportunity now to take AI capabilities and apply it to that. Imagine if your reps could know that they got an account allocated to them because it's incredibly similar to an existing customer, and not in a black box way where I don't really understand why something just spit this out in kind of the classic, machine learning models that we've had in the past, but something that actually says, hey, let me explain to you in English why this is similar to these existing customers. Here's use cases you could point to as a rep. that becomes really, really powerful. And AI, especially the new generative AI capabilities and their ability to understand language, gives us capabilities around that really didn't exist before. And so this is when I talk about all the different use cases, this is where I think there's entire pipelines of things that you can do by combining new capabilities from large language models around being able to summarize and research data with maybe more traditional machine learning models that help you cluster and prioritize things into a process that can make all of your reps much more efficient. And that's what we're doing at GradingWorks, but we think this is what the future looks like. It doesn't look like spreadsheets where you're using like basic firmographics and zip codes and things like that to just carve things up to like potential value over the course of the year. It looks like something that's much more dynamic, happening continuously, and using AI to make those types of decisions so that every rep has an opportunity to succeed.
What's intriguing as well is when I look at this model versus territory models, when we, I've been in many discussions where we go, oh, Noelle is really screwed. She's got the tri-state region and it's a terrible region. We'll revisit that next time we carve territories. So she's kind of out of luck for the next year. But this is a constantly running feedback loop. And there's, we can talk about the better math applications of AI, but there's also just the faster math applications. The fact that they're not doing a calculation that we perhaps couldn't have done over a week messing around in spreadsheets, hoping we didn't screw up a formula. But the important thing is that this is constantly running and therefore constantly self-correcting. So the rep that drew the tri-state region and has the short straw, we now can recognize that and correct for it quickly, which potentially, helps that rep, but also, per your point, helps the business play Moneyball by expanding the distribution of really successful reps and helping that person succeed.
I would have a yes and for that, Russ, which is there is a discontinuity here. There is something new, which is the ability to do some of the research ahead of time that good reps would do, right? You think about like a really good rep, if they're being coached well, one of the things that they want to go do is they want to reach out to companies that have some level of similarity so they can refer back to a successful engagement with, customer X, Y, and Z, right? And so if we can use the capabilities of large language models to systematize that, to bring that to the fore, to highlight those things for reps, and actually use that as part of how we distribute accounts, it goes a long way towards taking all of our, our sort of top of the bell curve players and equipping them with some of the tools that only the like far right of the bell curve kind of players really utilized before. And so I think that's one of the things that's a little bit different is we can do that better math, we can do it continuously, but we can also layer in a lot more deeper understanding about how to run plays that are successful, that have been successful for some of those A players in the past.
And you're also giving them the rationale behind it. So it's not the black box scoring model told me this was a great account for me, but here's why, here's the things you want to talk about. This is knowing those similarities. I love the way you're talking about teeing those up for a good rep to have them available.
Yeah.
Well, how does this impact humans, right? What is the impact of transforming your B players? And, feel free to, both describe, sort of what you've seen in general, but I'd love to hear from each of you a customer story of somebody whose business has perhaps been transformed or a rep whose life has been made better by this.
Sure, I'll jump in, Russ. I think, we really think about what we can do, and I'd honestly say what Hays can do as well at two levels, right? There's a business organizational impact, and then there's also a deep personal impact, right? If I hear what Hays is talking about, and I think about being a rep in a company that uses that type of software, there's a fairness to that, right? I mean, I'm not stepping in. I don't have to wait until the rep with the best territory leaves, right? It's like I can be given a more equal, better chance at succeeding. For us on the coaching side, right, we really look at it like one of the fundamental problems is people want to know what good looks like. And if we can share with everybody what good looks like and give them coaching to achieve that, I think we can dramatically unlock people's potential at a personal level, right? We can take, the brand new rep who, has a lot of capability, but kind of hasn't ever been given fluency across the book of business and the book of products that they have. We can give them what we would call is enough cycles and enough reps and enough what I would call difficult practice to help them feel like they're confident and capable in a variety of situations, and we can unlock better performance for them. Reps love it, right? I mean, the data is the average manager spends less than 30 minutes a week coaching reps. And that's pretty scary. If I'm entering a new system, I want to succeed. I know there's information and knowledge that I don't have. How do I go get that? And so, for us, we really think about the potential here. Yes, it's at the business level, and it's back to the Benioff quote of if we can move that curve to the right, take 20% of the team and make them high performers in addition to the existing 20% of A players, right? Then we can dramatically impact business performance. But some of the most fun that we hear and the stories that we love hearing from our customers are about that individual, right? That individual rep that all of a sudden gets coaching, that their potential is unlocked, and they can perform so much better. And AI can democratize training and coaching and attention in a way that just has never been done before. And so that's what's really exciting for us.
Which lets the true talent shine through. I love that. And you can really—
It also just expands the talent pool significantly, because you're just not going to focus again on those President's Club people or those winners just getting all of the limelight and attention. It democratizes attention.
Makes great sense. Hayes, how about you? What do you hear from customers in terms of the impact, either business or personal?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories that I've heard recently was we had a customer summit a few weeks back, and one of the CROs at one of our customers was speaking at that summit, and she mentioned a conversation she had with a rep, and she said that she had said something that rep misinterpreted a little bit to indicate that maybe they were going to move away from dynamic books. And the rep stopped her and said, "Hold on a minute, you can't do that. You can't take this away from me. This is the best, situation that I've had in sales," right? And I think the reason for that has to do with, this gives reps the ability to know that their fate is much more in their hands, right? They're not just kind of gifted a territory and told what to do, just go figure it out, right? They're actually being supported by the business in terms of prioritization and focus. And I think, and that overall, like, look, we see lots of business impact from what we do. We've got case studies where customers have seen 16% lift in pipeline. They've created more opportunities with teams that are half the size than what they had previously. Those are all kinds of business impacts. But I think one thing that I've really learned in the course of my career, and Russ kind of highlighted the little bit of how I came into this, but I was a computer science major. I was a software engineer, eventually a CEO, and then kind of found myself falling in love with sales teams and sales organizations. And one of the reasons for that is because it is still one of those places where a really motivated person can go find a way to build success for themselves. But at the same time, it's also a place where a lot of folks really don't get to that point because they don't have the level of support that they need. And I think one of the appreciations that I developed over time was being a sales rep is a really freaking hard job. Imagine that you had to get told no or be ignored, time after time after time after time, in the hopes that, maybe 5% of the time, if you're lucky, you're going to get some other response than that. It's really hard to do. And so I think it's incumbent on us to figure out all of the ways that we can support people who are trying to succeed in that, and give them the confidence that they know what to say when they finally get that pickup after 50 dials, right? Give them the confidence that they know how to respond when a prospect asks them a tough question, and then give them the confidence that they're reaching out to the right people, that they do have a chance of success. And I think that that's incumbent on us as not just sales leaders, but as people to do that for our team. And so I think that what is exciting to me about the potential for AI here is that it gives those folks, more of a chance at success. They don't necessarily just get left behind because there's just, a minimum amount of bandwidth for the people who are doing the spreadsheets for the territory design, or a minimal amount of bandwidth for their sales manager. And so their sales manager just focuses on their top 2 reps and ignores, the next, 7, right? So I think this is what I think is exciting for me, is it gives reps a shot. And it gives them ability to, in many cases, be successful as a result of their own initiative and their own effort. They can go and focus more on the training because that's available to them, and they can go have these conversations that Quantified makes possible, and learn how to do their craft better. And from a Gradient Works perspective, we can make sure that they're not just stuck in a bad territory, so that no matter what they do, they don't have a chance of success. And I think that's going to go a long way towards, even though we're talking about the robots taking over here, it's going to go a long way towards making sales a more humane profession, and making sure that people who want to succeed can.
I love that. That's a great insight. And I love the human element of that, as you both know. We've got a couple questions coming in that I'm going to, run by you two for answers here. Some intriguing questions, actually, but I want to mention, in both cases, for both companies, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. We're always putting out great content there, and feel free to visit the sites, check it out, see how the simulator works, see how dynamic books work. From a question perspective, I've got one. Let me find it here. Sorry, because there were a few and I want to sort through and get the good ones. Knowing that, this is an interesting one. Knowing that I'm getting a lot of outreach from new vendors in the AI space, how do I vet them? How do I understand whether they actually have sort of deep expertise, or whether they just stuck something on top of ChatGPT and now they're going to try to sell it to me? So how do I know that I'm not going to get swindled in this new AI infused marketplace, is really how I'd phrase that question.
Hayes, why don't you go ahead?
That is a good question. And it's tough, right? Because so I've been doing things related to machine learning for a long time. And so I've seen multiple iterations of the kind of like magic sprinkles, like our fairy dust is going to do, X, Y, and Z, right? I would say, look, the thing is, a couple of things. One is, pop open the hood as much as you possibly can. If they're promising that they can do X, Y, and Z, make sure that you see them do X, Y, and Z with your data, right? Make sure that you get an opportunity to really understand, like, what are the edge cases? What can it do? What can it do? And I think one of the challenges right now is that we're in a world where some of the things it can do are actually kind of surprising. Okay, it's a little bit shocking to me that like we can generate this content that actually does provide like a really good summary of like a situation or something like that. And these are things that weren't really possible before. But at the same time, we need to remember this isn't magic, and there is kind of a scope to what's possible and what's not. But I would say the biggest thing is vet it with your data. So much of the tech right now makes a really good demo that just doesn't really do that much in practice, right? And I think that's the important thing, is to try to get a layer down and don't just listen to we can do this magic thing. You really want to say, prove it. Show me how you're going to do that for me. And that's my best advice right now. But I would say, keep an open mind. There's some really cool stuff that wasn't really possible before. So don't immediately dismiss it. My bullshit meter goes off pretty quickly in a lot of cases. And I've actually had to adjust that a little bit, because there are some pretty impressive things that weren't possible. But yeah, make them prove it.
Good stuff. Noah, anything to add?
I really liked Hayes' answer. I mean, I would probably build on it in a positive direction, but also in maybe a supportive direction. The positive one is, AI is a remarkable tool. It's a really powerful new, paradigm for technology. It's doing a lot already, and it's only going to do more. And so, kind of first and foremost, I actually say, like, you're probably pitched a lot, stay on the journey with some of the companies, because the evolution of the foundational technology is just so incredible that as much as some organizations may not have it all figured out right now, if they're solving a problem for you or starting to solve a problem for you, I can promise you that, Moore's law is broken, and the pace of innovation for good partners is going to be really fast. On the other side, agreeing with Hayes, I mean, it's not that hard to put a chatbot on top of your application anymore. And so if we hear from some prospects and they say, we just need AI, we need to buy AI, Noah, help us buy AI. And, there's a danger to not thinking about trying to look for organizations that really have been thinking about a problem and a unique business problem. AI is an accelerator for good solutions in that department. I mean, listen to how long Hayes has been thinking about RevOps, right? I mean, he was doing this before AI was cool. We've been thinking about behavioral science and making people better at the way that they have human conversations for a decade. And, AI helps us do that in a much better way, but it's not foundational to it's not the only thing we do, right? We are fusing it with intelligence and training data and expertise that makes us real in the way that we do that. And so, getting beyond the chatbot would maybe be the counsel I'd have on using AI in a more powerful way.
Makes great sense. Another interesting question coming in, this one for Hayes, and let me pull it up. Here it is. Okay. CRM integration has to be a big part of what Gradient Works does. That's the statement from the person asking the question. What CRMs do you integrate with?
Salesforce. So we focus specifically in the Salesforce ecosystem. So for the types of companies that we work with, which are generally fairly high velocity, fairly good sized sales teams, probably a minimum of 20 reps or so, that we occasionally go below that. They're typically using that as their system of record. So yeah.
Makes great sense. And that's, as companies scale, they're either on Salesforce or they're likely to end up on Salesforce. So that makes great sense. There is one more. Oh, yeah. Quantified, Noah. I see how the practice works, but how do you get results? I think what they're asking is, what feedback do they get?
Yeah, so one of the things we've built on and really validated, Russ, is there's a model of learning called the 70-20-10 model of learning. And one of the big things that Quantified tries to do when we help people perform better is to bring that model forward. Because if you think about, so 70% is experiential, 20% is feedback and coaching, and 10% is content. And that's actually how people learn. That's been studied for a long time. The foundational problem in education and in training is it's really easy to produce content. I can write a textbook and give that to a ton of students and say, here, go learn. Problem is that's not how people want to learn. And so for Quantified, what we're trying to bring forward and to answer that question is that 70% is experience and 20% is feedback, coaching that can be from an AI, but even better from a manager or from a leader, and 10% is content. And so you can reinforce that practice, reinforce that experience with good feedback, scoring and benchmarking and best practice video examples, time with your manager where your manager has already been armed with observable game tape to say, Russ needs coaching on building rapport and needs coaching on his product knowledge in these 3 areas. That's how we can really reinforce the practice. So it's not just, you don't want bad practice, right? You want practice, you want better practice, you want reinforced practice, you want spaced practice, and that's how we can bring forward results.
That sounds great. Well, I would like to thank both of you for your time today. This has been certainly illuminating to me. I've, from the questions coming in, et cetera, it feels like other people have learned a great deal as well. So I'd like to thank you both, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.